What's up, YouTubers? This is me, Johnny. I'm still here in Xela, Guatemala. I've been spending some time reading and doing research on COVID-19, how it's affecting our ability to travel, how it's affecting our ability to earn a living, and stuff like that. So I've been thinking about kind of the after effects of all this. What I've determined personally is the government's implementing policies which is going to make it very difficult to have the kind of life we had before, prior to COVID-19. What I mean by that is, just an example, here's an example. Today, I just read Thailand is going to implement, well, they have a new visa, which is interesting, a 6-month visa as a matter of fact. And apparently they're letting some people in, and they're also letting in, or they will start letting in some of the other visa holders that they, prior to that, they weren't letting in. Anyways, what I want to point, it's all very, very complicated, but what I'm trying to point out is they just said today or yesterday or a few days ago that if you get the vaccine, this is not about the vaccine per se, but if you get the vaccine, you will still be quarantined when you come into Thailand. The reason I mention that is a lot of people are saying we're going to have this vaccine-like passport. I understand what you're saying, but even with a vaccine, there may still be countries that will either prohibit you from traveling to their country, which is happening even right now, or even if you get the vaccine, you'll have to quarantine. Now, I don't know if Thailand will be the only exception to that, and I really don't know how long that'll last, and I don't expect it to last a long time. But here's what I think is happening. More and more countries are going to use coronavirus and anything like a virus to limit people's ability to protest these things, to limit people's ability to travel, to limit people's ability to even earn a living, because right now in the United Kingdom, they have another shutdown and they've been extending it. And that's my point. It was going to be 2 weeks, now it's a month, and now it's going to be longer. And now, like, if you run a business, you're SOL. You're totally fucked. I hate to say that, but you're totally SOL. And all these governments are doing these things and they're not compensating their citizens. And when they do compensate citizens, it's usually for the wealthier classes and the elites. Example, if you look at the last COVID bill in the U.S., I believe recipients, a lot of people, maybe not all, but many people will get $600. If you add that up and what they're spending and then what's going to the wealthier people, it's really, really disproportionate towards the wealthy. Now, I'm a libertarian. I'm not saying I agree with handouts, and I'm not saying I agree with the wealthy getting handouts. I don't really like any of it. But you can see what they're doing. They're going to loot the Treasury one last time before there's another economic crisis and make sure that capital goes to them as opposed to the working class. Now, having said that, it's a lot of middle class people who actually pay tax. The upper middle class and middle class who pay a lot of tax in the U.S. If you have an LLC or corporation, your effective tax rate could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%. It's not really that big a deal. Anyhow, I'm not saying taxes are not totally a big deal in the U.S., but I'm just saying there's ways to mitigate it. And I'm also saying the government has tasted the power it's gotten from the United States to the United Kingdom in shutting down their economies and keeping people from earning a living. And I don't expect them to give that up. A lot of people do. I'm one of those that don't. I don't expect Uncle Sam or those chaps in the United Kingdom to give up their newly gained power to shut down their economy or to shut down protests. I mean, how long ago was it that in Paris you had the Yellow Jacket riots and that? I don't know if they're still going. Sometimes I hear they are, sometimes I don't. I don't pay attention to it as much. But they used COVID to shut all that down. And to a certain extent they were successful. But over a long period of time, I don't think they'll really be successful in that. But I've been thinking about it more and more. We're all going to have to learn how to support ourselves in a way that the government can't shut down. We're going to have to become more resilient. We're going to have to move more and more of our assets either offline or online and have a diversified portfolio of online and offline assets, online and offline ways to earn a living, online and offline ways to get a payment without having to get permission of Uncle Sam or whatever government you come from. I use PayPal a lot, but I'm seeing even PayPal could be shut down to shut people out of the system. I hope not, and I hope I'm wrong, but I could see that happening. Anyways, I I believe we have to become more resilient. And the main thing most of us have to do is keep an open mind about working for ourselves, working a part-time gig, online gig, or offline gig that's not related to our job, but basically become an entrepreneur and earn a living from our online or offline activities wherever we find ourselves in the world. And that's another point I want to make. More and more, if you're going to want to keep your standard of living, your quality of life, and your health, because more and more the government's going to dictate what you can and cannot do with your health, and what you can and cannot buy in your own home country. Many first world countries are going to make it more and more difficult to have natural ways of managing your health care. I'll just put it that way. And in the developing world, they can make those laws, but they can never really be enforced. Even making people get vaccinations in Latin America. I've lived in the Philippines. I've lived in Guatemala, and forcing people to do vaccines, I don't see how they can even do it. But other people have argued with me that I'm wrong, that they can make all these indigenous people get vaccines. I don't see how they're going to do that. I can't see the elites and the wealthy of Guatemala giving up their hard-earned capital to make sure the lower classes get vaccinated. I'm not trying to laugh it off. I'm just saying I don't see that happening. Anyways, my point is, if you want to have a certain standard of living, a certain quality of life, you're going to have to be willing to learn new skills to earn income either online or offline without your current job. You might consider having a residency like in Central America or wherever you want to choose to live. Central America can be an affordable place to live. Asia, parts of Asia can be affordable. But I'm just pointing out you're going to have to be flexible in where you live. You may have to leave your home country like the U.S. or Canada or the United Kingdom if you want to continue earning your living. You may have to be open to banking in other countries because the current banking system in your first world country may not always be available. As of right now, it still is, and it's still an option. And I wouldn't close out my accounts or anything, or my payment options. But just an example, if you want to settle U.S. dollar trades, I think you always will be, but it could be in the future if you have an LLC with your dollar account or whatever bank account in your own name, you may not be able to settle your accounts if the government chooses to shut you down, or if these social media platforms, if they shut you down and then you're not able to open another bank account at another bank to do your transactions. Now, that hasn't got to that extreme in the U.S., but I can see how that could. And then in Europe, in many European countries, there's like 4 or 5 main big banks in their countries. And if you get shut out of one of the big banks in Europe, that gives you all the offshore options of using your ATM card and get your money offshore relatively easy. None of this is really easy anymore, but it used to be. Then you're really SLL. So you will have to learn how to settle either large or small transactions in Bitcoin, or large or small transaction in some alternative online currency, or with gold money or bullion vault or things like that. Excuse me. Most people aren't even talking about there's a new online currency or cryptocurrency has audited gold bullion. I don't want to get into it, but that's Pax Gold. But that is a new thing that may become a big thing. I don't know if it will or not, but I'm keeping my eye on it. I have $100 in it, so I'm doing my part to learn these things. But I could see in the future, like if you want to just settle small amounts in gold or in Bitcoin, you're going to have to learn how to do these things, and it could get easier, could get more difficult. I don't know. I don't expect the government to just roll over and let people have their freedom and liberty back. I expect we'll have to fight for it. Speaking of fighting for it, I'm on a variety of websites, a lot of expat sites, and there's more and more people really divided on this COVID thing, and people in families are dividing themselves on this COVID thing. People in the online community on expat sites are dividing themselves. I mean, by that, I mean people who want to wear masks, people who don't, people who want to force people to get vaccines, people who don't. I don't want to force anyone. I mean, I want a voluntary, thing. If you want to get your vaccine, get it. If you don't. But I personally really don't care either way. But anyways, I wear my mask to try. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I conform because I'm in a foreign country. I don't want to get people pissed off at me. But the big thing is in a lot of these countries, people aren't wearing masks anyways. Half the time I forget it. That's another thing. But to a certain extent, if you want to go into stores here, you have to wear it. But anyways, It's really dividing people, and I don't like that. Personally, I don't like it. Um, and that's partly why more and more I don't particularly want to visit the U.S., except there's a few exceptions of basically um, family connections and various family dynamics. There's a few things that happened to me like in the past few years, but there's been quite a few elderly people that passing away and things of that nature. And so that's partly why I like living in Latin America. I can go back and help some of my family members, that kind of thing. But um, I just don't like the way it's really dividing our society. And I don't, there's people who think you should stay and fight the system. I just don't. Like, if you want to and you enjoy that and that's your, you really enjoy that, I mean, go ahead. I don't really like fighting the system. I prefer just living in lower cost living countries. I also prefer certain dating dynamics down here or in Asia or wherever. And I'm going to get hit for this, but there's a lot of business opportunities that are very, very tax friendly and regulatory friendly. And those, if you fall into that, you enjoy that. These are the kind of things you can't really do in the U.S. anymore. People always ask me, why do you want to live in Latin America or Asia? Because there's certain things you can't even do anymore. That's fun for me, maybe not for other people. Fun for me, that no matter if you have money, you can't do them anyways because there's regulatory, tax, compliance. It doesn't make it fun anymore or enjoyable. You can't spend your earnings how you want to spend them anyways. Things are so regulated. And the United States, to me personally, isn't even the worst of the lot of the first world countries. I'm not saying Australia is, but I had to pick on some people in Australia. It used to be Australia is kind of cool, but now they're even, to me, worse than New Zealand. And New Zealand ain't great. Anyways, just watching these new things that governments are going to do to keep you from traveling this year is really, really disheartening. It's sad. And I'm still like a little bit hopeful in 3 months this will all go away. I just don't think it all will. I think some of it will, but I'm willing to be wrong. It's looking like some countries are going to let themselves have a way out by keeping us locked down. They're saying they're going to loosen up, but I don't know that they will. So if you're on the sidelines, you're going to have to, sugar out the pot, like my dad used to say. Like, what do you want? If you want more freedom and liberty, you're going to have to be willing to either move. Even within the U.S., you might have to be willing to move to a smaller community. You're going to have to be willing to learn new skills to survive without a conventional type job. You're going to have to be willing, if you're going to have a job or a conventional job, or even be an entrepreneur, learn skills that you can transfer online and get paid online. By that I mean through PayPal, through onshore, offshore banking opportunities or whatever, various platforms to get paid and all that. And for various ways to get your earnings deposited, like in country A or country B or country C, and then maybe you live in country D, which I don't want to get into that, but if you're not willing to learn those things and get adaptable, it's going to be tough. It's really going to be tough. There's people who have tasted power in the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand. I want to name all these places. Even in states in the U.S. with Republican governors are really cracking down on their citizens. It's not like black and white. People think it is, but it's really not. It's some governors have tasted power and they're going to shut down their societies. Some have decided they're going to not shut down their societies. There's resentment because of that. And I don't know how it's all going to fall out, but I suspect the next year is going to be tough. I want it to be the opposite of that, but I'm more prepared that it's going to be tough for people in the United States. It's really, I think, really going to be tough for people in Eastern or Western Europe. I expect to see more and more people from North America, meaning the United States and Canada, and more people from Western Europe to expatriate, or at least live part of the year outside of their country of birth, because they're not going to have the satisfying life they have, and their cost of living is going to keep going up through these devalued currencies and possibly escalating taxes. I don't see them really escalating that much in the U.S., but just as an example, like something like half the states in the U.S., their local budgets are underwater by 40-50%. And they can't print money in those situations. All they can do is raise taxes or cut the benefits. And cutting the benefits is really going to be hard. Or they can get a bailout from Uncle Sam. We'll see what happens. Not every state can get the bailout, only one or two. And then after that, the other states will just be SOL. Anyways, these are my ramblings on all this. I'd like to know what other people think, how the future is going to unfold. Leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, but leave a comment if you think things are going to get way, way better, or just keep kind of grinding down. I would like to think they're going to get better, but I keep seeing how, for no rhyme or reason that I can think of, when you look at so-called published or what's it called, verifiable data. Well, it's peer-reviewed nonsense. Okay, peer-reviewed stuff. I'm not big on peer review because a lot of stuff get peer-reviewed and get published. But on the so-called peer review by legitimate, or what people consider legitimate sites, you can see how this COVID thing is unfolding, and it's kind of going down. It's going down and leveling out, then going down, leveling out. But yet, a lot of Western societies still want to shut their societies down. And that's causing real hardship and poverty amongst poor people, lower middle class people. And they don't seem to be willing to compensate people for destroying their businesses or destroying the jobs that they had with those prior businesses that used to be open. And they seem more than willing to bail out the wealthy. And again, I'm not trying to do any class welfare, but they seem willing to do that. And this is not going to go down well with people over a long period of time. Anyways, I'm going to shut this down, upload this, and look forward to your comments. Thank you. Good night.